This session is going to be about how to search online. This is the third of our Vaccine Insights Flexible Learning course, but the course is designed so that you can tune into any of these sessions individually. However, if you want to catch up with previous sessions, you can also find sessions 1 and 2, the recording and the accompanying study guide on our YouTube channel and also on the Vaccine Insights Hub. Today, we're going to have a couple of objectives. Number 1, we're going to talk about how to use smart keywords. Number 2, we're going to dive into the world of Boolean search queries. 3, we're going to discuss how we should think about sources when it comes to online investigation. And 4, I'm going to teach you a trick of how to do site searches and quote searches. Today's session is more about introducing how these things work. If you want a practical session where we try these things live and where you can test them with us, please join our recap session on Friday. That is going to be an interactive session centered around Boolean search queries and online searching. So today's and Fridays complement really well if you're looking to learn how to be more effective and strategic with how we search online. My name is Laura Garcia. I am the Training and Support Manager at First Draft, based in the UK, and you can find me on Twitter at lauragrb.com. I love talking about anything that has to do with disinformation or the space that we work in and how do we collaborate with each other to make sure that we're getting the story right. So let's talk about keywords. Your search online, whether you're looking on social media or on websites, is only going to be as good as your keywords. And that means the words or the phrases that you're asking a web browser or a social media site to search for. And it's about thinking about them in a really strategic way so that you don't miss out on conversations, right? Remember that language is culture and words shape language, and it's important to really think about them strategically to change the kind of results that you're finding. So for example, on the left-hand side, we have a list of possible keywords related to coronavirus. And if you go down the 2 columns, you have coronavirus spelled as it should be, coronavirus spelled with an A, because sometimes we make mistakes. And also, if you're monitoring conversations across language barriers, for example, for those of us who English isn't our native language, like me, my native language is Spanish, sometimes misspelling things happens. Considering as well different ways that people write a same word. You have COVID-19 without the dash, and then COVID-19 with the dash. And then also words that refer to how people talk about these things online that might be different to how journalists or health communicators talk about an issue online, right? So for example, you have the words lockdown or quarantine or Wuhan, because that's where this whole thing started, or the flu, because people use that as a way to talk about coronavirus and compare it. You also have words for example, the pharmaceutical companies producing the vaccines, Moderna or Pfizer, and even also words that imply some of the conspiracy theories that people have around this space, right? And very quickly, you can see that this is a very short list that can grow really quickly to make sure that we're listening to all the different conversations that people have online. And there's no better way to do this than just brainstorming and collaboration with your colleagues and with people who work in other spaces is going to make your keywords even stronger because they might think of keywords that you hadn't thought about. Keywords can be hashtags, keywords can be just one word, keywords can be a little phrase. It's about thinking, how do I find these little signal pieces of language that will help me surface conversations around the topic I'm trying to monitor, right? Let's look at the one on the right-hand side. This is not related necessarily to vaccines or to coronavirus, but media bias, right? The accusations that can sometimes be thrown around about whether the mainstream media is biased one way or the other. The search keywords that you have on this side are very much English-centric, and I would say even American in how people talk about this kind of stuff. But let's go through them and see how you could find possible parallels in the countries that you work in. What are the phrases that are similar, or what other phrases do people use to talk about this kind of stuff? I saw a wonderful today that said that and people in Germany have made up more than 100 words in the space of a year to describe what they see in the pandemic, right? So could you include some of these words in there as well? So for example, for media bias, you have mainstream media as a phrase, MSM as the acronym, right? Because it's important to include internet speech, how people speak online. Coastal elite, because the accusation is that people on the East Coast of the States are the ones that work in the media. PC, which is shortened for politically correct. PC brigade, which is again politically correct brigade. Or for example, on the right-hand side, you have the phrase won't cover this, because people might include that when they're tweeting or posting on social media to say, I can't believe the media won't cover this, or the media doesn't want you to know, right? And it's important to think about those phrases as well. It's not just words, it's not just hashtags, it's what are the clues in language, and where can you find them, right? Every time you see a new post that you think is interesting that relates to your work, analyze it. Look at the words in it. Can you pick out some that you can add to your list of keywords that'll make your search even more strategic all the time? And it's important to remember that ideology affects the language that people use, right? So we're going to look at an example here around vaccines. The one on the left is a tweet by Chelsea Clinton, who is the daughter of Hillary Clinton, who ran for president of the United States, and she is pro-vaccines. On the right, you have a tweet by someone who is more on the vaccine hesitant side of the conversation. And look at how different the words are that they're using to talk about the same issue. On Chelsea Clinton's tweet, it's not too much to ask. Please hashtag believe nurses, hashtag mask up, be a hashtag flu fighter, and hashtag vaccinate yourself and your family. And already there, you can see words and keywords and hashtags that you could add to your list of keywords to monitor to look for conversations that are pro-vaccines, right? And on the right-hand side, the tweet reads, the day New Jersey parents told hashtag big pharma to refer to pharmaceutical companies at the State House, no to segregation and no mandates, sending a message to the entire world that your children's medical decision is your choice. Proud of you all across the world. Happy anniversary, hashtag medical freedom. And you can see how these words are completely different. They're talking about the same thing, but the tweet on the right is using words like big pharma, so talking about the pharmaceutical companies. It's talking about choice, about vaccines being a choice and the medical choice people have, and using the hashtag medical freedom, right? And it's important to remember, particularly when you're trying to surface conversations on issues that are emotional or contentious or political, that there's always at least two sides to that story. And that means that you need to think about the words that people on either side of the argument use, right? And sometimes there's more than two sides, especially, for example, if you're covering elections. Maybe each party is going to have different ways of talking about the same issue. And you, as the person who's trying to know about all of these conversations, you need to tune in to all of these different ways of speaking, to all of these channels. And the only way to do that is by having the right keywords to surface the right content. And always be on the lookout for new ones. So if there's ever a post that you see that is relevant to the work that you're doing, either because it supports the work that you do or it can be problematic in the future, look for possible keywords, right? So for example, this is a Facebook post, sorry, by an account trying to talk about vaccines in a scary way, and look at the little phrases that we've highlighted. Profits before people, side effects, the side effects that they're worried about, so brain barrier or encephalopathy or neurological changes. Neurological changes is a big one in that kind of community. Can you then add those to your list of keywords of what to look out for? Because if you only look for conversations using the words that you would use to search, then that search is very much limited by your own ideology and the own information and the information that you are normally in contact with. And to effectively monitor these spaces and surface all kinds of narratives, it's important to look beyond your own bias, and this is how you do it. So now that we've talked about keywords, and this takes practice, right? It's time and brainstorming and talking with colleagues, and it becomes an iterative process. You have a list of keywords, you find new posts, you add the keywords to your list of keywords, and it goes round and round in circles, ever strengthening how well you can monitor these conversations. How you're going to make them work for you is by using something called Boolean queries. For those of you who are listening in another language or are monitoring conversations not in English, I'm going to show you how to do this with English examples, but you can do the same with any language. The only thing to keep in mind is that your operators have to be in English and have to be capitalized. From there on, the rest of your search can be in whatever language or languages you are looking to monitor. Let me break it down. So you have two main operators to help you do Boolean search queries. And, all in capitals, which limits your results, and or, all in capitals, which expands your results. So for example, on the left, if you type into Google vaccine and injury, you are limiting your results by saying to the search engine, I want results that include the word vaccine and the word injury. The difference with just typing vaccine injury into your web browser is that if you just use the phrase on its own, Google is going to show you examples of posts that have just vaccine, just injury, vaccine injury together, maybe a different kind of spelling, and it takes license to what it surfaces. If you use a Boolean search query, you are in control of what you're asking it to show. Now, these work on Google, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn, so you can very quickly start to see how powerful they'll become in your search. So on the left, vaccine and injury limits your results by forcing it to have one of each category. On the right, or expands your results, because you're telling the search engine, I want content that includes the word Moderna or the word Pfizer. And it means that you're basically making two searches all in one go, right? And it's important to remember as well that you're searching through the text, whether it's the text of a tweet or the text of a Facebook post or a website. This isn't looking at the text on images, it's just looking at the text in the words. The third Boolean operator that is really useful is one that is going to help you exclude results. It's a minus sign sometimes, and sometimes it's not, all in capital letters, depending on the platform that you're searching on. For example, the search query down here, vaccine minus Moderna, is going to surface results that include in the text the word vaccine, but exclude any of them that include the word Moderna. This is particularly helpful if you're doing searches in a different language where maybe words have a couple of meanings, right? So for example, in Spanish, the word for vaccine, vacuna, also means anything that comes from cows. So there are ways of excluding results that have to do with cows and not vaccines by using this minus and not sign. And there's a really good example that we're going to show on Friday's recap session about it by our colleague Daniela Costa. Let's keep making them more powerful. You can add parentheses, like in school, like in math, to combine your searches. So for example, here, you're saying to the search operator, show me any content that has one of the words in the first parentheses and one of the words in the second parentheses. So effectively, you're doing a bunch of searches at the same time. So this will show you anything that has the word Moderna or Pfizer, so it's a mention of the pharmaceutical companies, and a mention of injury or harm. See how it's getting powerful? Let's do a big one now. This is just an expanded version of the Boolean search query we've seen before. So all of the words highlighted in yellow are words about vaccines, and all of the words highlighted in green are words that have to do with harm, with people having bad side effects after vaccines. So the ones in yellow, like vaccine, vaccinate, Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and AstraZeneca spelled differently. Again, because we don't all get it right. And also, sometimes we're all typing search queries or posting from our phones, right? Small screens, bigger chance of mistakes. Second set of words, injury, harm, death, side effect with a hyphen. It's important to note that if something has a hyphen because there isn't a space, you don't need to use quotation marks. Or side effects as a quotation, autism, Bell's palsy, sick, fever, brain barrier, or encephalopathy. Some of these words we found through the post that we went through earlier in this bootcamp. So you can see how the more that you do this as an iterative process that feeds into itself, the more powerful your search queries are going to be. So this particular one might look huge, but all it's doing is asking your search engine or Twitter or YouTube or LinkedIn, show me content that has one of the yellows, one of the words in green. Consider misspellings. Very, very, very important. Again, because some things are hard to misspell and sometimes we're just going really quickly. Particularly around vaccines, there are lots of words relating to medicine and chemicals, which are very hard to spell, especially if you are doing it as your second or your third language, right? Think of all the ways that people could misspell the compound hydroxychloroquine, which for a while was touted as a cure for coronavirus, but it really isn't. Second thing to remember, use quotation marks if you want to search for a term or a phrase. So by putting it in quotation marks, you are forcing the search engine to look for it as a complete set of words. Tweak as you go, incredibly important. Keep a Word document maybe, or a place where you can collaborate with colleagues so that you can build on them together. The more words that you find, pay attention to the comments that you get on social media or the comments section on news stories. What words are people using to talk about a subject? Add them to your keywords, add them to your Boolean search queries. And this is really going to start to widen the kinds of conversations that you have access to. Reminders, and or always have to be in capital letters, or expands your results and limits your results. Quotation marks will help you search for a phrase in its entirety. So for example, vaccine injury has to be in quotation marks. After the vaccine has to be in quotation marks. If you include words like me, my, I, mine, these are all personal pronouns that we use to talk about things that happen to us. So if you're looking for personal experiences and eyewitnesses to a specific event, then including them in your Boolean search queries means that you're probably going to find them quicker because you know what you're looking for. Group similar keywords in parentheses to help the search query know what it's looking for, and always check your work. This is a little bit like computer programming or maths, where if you have a parenthesis out of place, it won't run the query. It's really helpful to write them out in a Word document because Google's search bar or Twitter's search bar can be really fiddly and tiny, and it makes it really hard to figure out where you've made that mistake. So make sure you have a place where you can check it, and also it means that you can share them with your colleagues. Now, if we're talking about keywords and sources, remember that there's all sorts of different places where people find information, right? From some of the more popular open and public social media sites like Facebook and Instagram to some of the darker spaces of the internet. And think about how communities talk about this issue in specific spaces and how that conversation might change. Site searches, getting a little bit more pro. So site searches help you force a search within a specific domain. So for example, this search says site : and that's the important operator that's going to let you do a site search. Site does not have to be capitalized. Site : facebook.com/pages means that you're asking Google to search only within that specific URL. If you didn't know, facebook.com/pages is the subdomain for all Facebook pages, right? And you can then combine them with a Boolean query. So now this search is asking Google, search just within this URL that is the specific one for Facebook pages, but look for the word vaccine and the word UK in it. And immediately you find pages on Facebook that have these words in the title or in the description, and it makes your search better and easier, for example, than doing it on Facebook's own search. Important to remember that if you're ever searching on Facebook natively or on Twitter or any platform, the algorithm is trying to give you things that you like based on your previous experience and activities on that platform. If you want to break out of that silo and make your search wider, do it here. Do it with a site search. And you can also combine them, for example, with a quote search to look for specific language. So this site search, again, is looking within facebook.com/pages, which is the specific URL for Facebook pages. And then it's looking for vaccine choice in its entirety as a phrase. And you can see how different these results are to the previous ones, where we were just looking for a mention of the word vaccine and a mention of the acronym UK for United Kingdom. This is looking for language that people use to discuss vaccines. And that's where you start to leverage the power of keywords, your Boolean search queries, and site searches to really find what you're looking for and be strategic.